Hi, everybody. Paige Panzarello here, the Cashflow Chick. Thank you so much for joining us for the Wednesday Wealth webinar. I really wanted to let you know that I'm super excited about tonight because tonight is about not being an expert. Tonight, I'm joined by two of my former Building Wealth with Notes workshop attendees, and they're note newbies. They've gone on to buying, educating themselves with the Building Wealth with Notes workshop, and one of them has also gone on and taken the master class, but they've educated themselves and then they've put the action behind their education, and they've gone on to buy their first notes. And so tonight is really about talking to them about their experiences and about their mistakes that they've made and what they've done with their education, both the Building Wealth with Notes workshop and also the master class. And I really wanted to showcase them because, as a note investor myself and a real estate investor, and I've done this for a really long time, and yes, I am an expert, but I really wanted to show everybody that it's doable, even if you're not an expert, even if you're new to the note space, even if you feel a little uncomfortable or a little out of confidence. And so I chose to bring on these two gentlemen to share their stories with you, to let you know that, one of them has a full-time job and he still is a note investor. He still makes the time and finds the time and puts action behind his education. The other one is a full-time real estate investor and has a thriving business but hasn't been in the note space. And so I really wanted to bring them on and let you hear from the horse's mouth how they have been able to take the knowledge that they learned and they gained and the tools that I've given them in their toolbox between the Building Wealth with Notes workshop and the master class, and how they've implemented that into their business and their life and their new career as note investors. And so I'm really pleased to welcome James Tatlow this evening and also Nick D'Angelo. So we're going to get started here in a moment, and I'm really excited to have you hear what these two gentlemen have to say, because I'm just so proud of what they have accomplished and how far they have come from where they started. So here we go. Start recording. So now I'm recording. Hello, everybody again. So James Tatlow is a Building Wealth with Notes workshop attendee and also masterclass. And then Nick D'Angelo is also a Building Wealth with Notes workshop attendee, but he has not yet attended the masterclass.
Not yet.
Not yet. And we'll talk about that in a minute, Nick. But, again, these two gentlemen came from very different backgrounds. So I'm really excited because they're not experts yet, but they are taking action and they have implemented what they learned. And I wanted to talk to them about their venture and their adventure tonight into the wonderful world of notes. So that being said, Nick, why don't we start with you? Because you just came to the last May workshop, right? May 3rd through the 5th, and which was a month ago. And I wanted to ask you what motivated you to come A, to the workshop, and B, why notes? For you, what was it about notes that appealed to you?
Sure. So it was about a month ago here. And so first I'll answer just what brought me to the seminar in general. Or I'll answer the why notes question. So my background was for a long time in trustee sales. We were buying at the courthouse steps, and we were, and I always kind of had, I always wanted to go after the biggest deal possible, go after the biggest opportunities possible. So we kept going for bigger and bigger and more expensive properties, and we kept getting beat at the steps, and I couldn't figure out why and who was, who the smartest guy in the room was. And it always seemed to be the dang note holders, honestly. And so I'm always eyeballing, why did this get postponed? Why did this happen? And every time it was always a note holder. And I was a young guy at the time. I was probably about 22. And so, people were more open with me, I think, than a lot of they didn't see me as real competition. So I would just go and talk to them. And I met a few of these dang note holders, and they were always the smartest people that I met there. And so I always had that kind of in the back of my head. And I sold a company recently and wanted to move more into real estate and full-time investment. And notes seemed like after tons of research, we landed on notes and wanted to move forward. And we, I brought Ryan out of my office, who's my right-hand man. We're in the trenches together every day. And we took your seminar. I I read a ton of books, realized that wasn't probably going to get me where I wanted to go fast enough with education. I'm huge on education. I'm big on investing in it. And I met you at the Paper Source seminar, and another gentleman out of your office. I'm spacing on his name right now. But I did some research. Yours was the best. It just so happened to be coming up right not too far away. So we bought a ticket ASAP, and we were excited to be there and glad that it was something that happened very quickly after our first convention. So.
Well, thank you for that, for those kind words. I appreciate that. I do strive to give as much information as possible to equip you and put enough tools in your toolbox that you actually can go out and take action after the class. So thank you for those kind words. I appreciate it.
Sure.
James, to you, what about you? The same question. So Nick had a little bit more real estate background per se. What about you? Did you have any real estate background really before you started into notes, and what brought you to notes?
So I did. I actually started with rentals. I purchased a couple properties off the MLS. Trying to build up that passive cash flow through rentals, but I ran into the same type of thing where a lot of times I was getting beat out by cash buyers, and I was getting to the point where I had 4 properties, all multifamily, small multifamily, and I started wondering if I really wanted to be a landlord.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in education mode as well, like trying to learn as much as I could about real estate investing. So I was listening to multiple podcasts, and I heard you actually on 2 or 3 different podcasts that I was listening to, talking about what you were doing with notes. And each time I would hear you talk, I'm like, oh, Paige is on. I got to listen to this. So I got a little bit more interested each time, and I went and checked out your website, saw that you had a class, and thought, I have to do this. I have to go. So I signed up and went, and that was a little over 2 years ago that I went to your workshop.
Terrific. And you still have a full-time job now, correct?
I do. Yes, I'm a programmer, so I go to the office every day, work 8 to 4, do notes kind of on the side. So.
Okay, so that is possible, because I know that that's sometimes a concern or a fear, right, that people may have, is that, hey, I've got a full-time job and this might take all of my time.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be hard, because I have to fit it in around my job. I have to do it either nights or weekends. So sometimes it can be challenging, but I just plug away and make sure that I get it done.
And we're going to talk a little bit later on about teams and how important a role they play in that, and how they help you. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. What do you feel that there may have been, because James, like you said, you did this, you starting about 2 years ago, and you and I have joint ventured together. And then you've gone off on your own. So prior to that, do you think, was there something that may have been holding you back when you initially started in note investing?
Absolutely. So I took your class. I think that was in March of 17, and then Paper Source was in April. So I went to Paper Source. I wanted to, learn as much as I could, as fast as I could. I met Jasmine Willa at Paper Source, which Jasmine.
I do.
She runs the Note Assistance Program.
Yep.
She is literally in my backyard, her office. So I thought, wow, this is a perfect opportunity. She has a program where she hand walks you through your first note purchase. So I signed up for her program, and it's still, even though I had access to inventory, it still took me a year to pull the trigger, because I was scared of, making a wrong choice, making a mistake, and losing my investment. I felt like I had to be an expert before I could actually jump in and take action. Mm-hmm. Which for me, I'm also big on the education piece. So that's kind of why I felt like I had to be an expert. But once I realized that's just not possible, that's what kind of led me to just, I need to take action and buy my first note.
So once you made that decision, because a lot of us suffer from analysis paralysis, and you can try so hard to know absolutely everything there is to
Right.
know, and you're never going to know that. I don't even know that, and I am an expert.
Right.
So once you kind of made that mental switch, was there something else that helped to propel you into action?
Just making sure that I had, like you said, a strong team behind me, so that if I did encounter, well, not if, but when I encountered something that I wasn't sure how to handle, I had people that I could turn to.
Fantastic. And for you, Nick, kind of a little bit of the same question. You didn't seem to have any fear at all. You jokingly said to me, that you're ready, fire, aim. So could you expand on that a little bit, and how does that play into your getting into the note investing space?
Yeah. So when I graduated college, I kind of always had side businesses growing up. And when I graduated college was right in the middle of the Great Recession. And so it was like zero money being lent. I got the opportunity to work for a real estate investor, and it was a dead office. We did absolutely nothing. We looked at deals all day long, couldn't get any financing. So I had to start businesses since then to kind of get me to pay my bills. And so I kind of just have this weird gut feeling of knowing when there's enough education on the table and when it's time to pull the trigger. And my biggest fear is not, am I going to mess a deal up? Because I know that's inevitable. I always mess deals up, and that's part of the process for me. But it's my biggest fear is wasting time, 100%. So if I would rather have a pace where I'm going to make more mistakes, pay for more expensive classes and education on my end, but do 2, 3, 4 times as many deals or whatever it is. So that's my number one concern, is always wasting time, and my velocity, how quickly my business can ramp up. So at this stage, I've suffered from analysis paralysis, more times than I can count. And at this stage, I saw the numbers and notes. I understood the process enough to understand that, hey, this is a jumping off point, and I just need to make it happen. Inventory was my biggest issue, just out of the gates. I'm a big whopping 1 deal in, but what I can say is it's not going to be my best deal. I know that for sure. We missed things in due diligence that were looking back obvious, but now are part of our standard operating procedures to double check and triple check certain items. And I still, should be okay on it, and hope that the next several and many more after that are same, and we learn from each one and just improve our processes. So
could you give us a little hint of what those couple of things are? Like, first of all, do you think that the Building Wealth with Notes workshop gave you the tools to look for those things, or was that something that you found on your own, or a little of both? Can you expand and give us a couple little hints of what the obstacles may have been?
Yeah, sure. So it was the seminar was awesome. We still have our binder that we go through regularly, and we have kind of put things together in a way that makes sense for how we do things with checklists. And Ryan in our office is a Marine, so we have awesome SOPs and
fantastic
behind those. So what we did was just kind of fumble through our first round of due diligence, and we missed that. I knew that there was a bankruptcy that had occurred and that was in process. I didn't know that it had fully went through the full process and the debt was discharged. So, so it was an interesting fact that we just kind of missed. We missed a checkbox, to be honest. But it was one of those where, okay, now we know that, something like 5% of people actually make it through the full bankruptcy, or I don't know, a very low number. And we did the research. We did we didn't go into depth enough. So we're dealing with that now. Didn't kill the deal. There's still enough money in the deal, and I'm still happy with it. But the way it's looking now, the option for it being reperforming is less than we would have liked initially. Obviously, the goal is to have it reperforming ideally.
So it sounds like this bankruptcy may have been a Chapter 7. Is that right?
I'd have to. That's a great question. I think I'd have to double check on it to answer your question. I'm not positive offhand, but it literally came up yesterday, and we're still going through different items on it. So loss mitigation has been awesome, and Daniel and his office have been super helpful. So I'm learning a lot. I'll put it that way.
Terrific. And just so everybody knows, Daniel Singer of Singer Law Group is who handles our loss mitigation. They don't take everybody, but if you are a Building Wealth with Notes workshop student, they take you because they know that you've been trained by me, and they become an integral part of your team. And the reason that I asked Nick that question about Chapter 7 is because he said the debt had been discharged. And in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, that's what happens. The debt gets discharged. In a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, it's a reorganization of debt. And so while there's not going to be a loss for Nick, I suspect largely Nick, because there's still the obligation, but it's not due from the borrower. So you're probably going to have to go through a foreclosure process. And I'm sure Daniel has told you that.
That's what people seem to suspect on this one. And I don't have enough experience to suspect, but I trust people that know a lot better than me. And so so it's interesting.
Exactly.
It's a good process.
Exactly. And so, James, why don't we go to you really quick and talk about, because you've joint ventured with me. You also have Daniel Singer as part of your group and part of your team. How strongly have you had to rely on him and for your notes that you've bought?
So he helped me with my first loan, and I'm working on my second one with him. Mm-hmm. I just purchased my third, which I just received the collateral file the other day, so I haven't had a chance to board it with him yet, but he has been performing borrower outreach.
Fantastic.
So.
And has he been able to kind of guide you through that process?
He has, yeah. My first note, we didn't really have a lot to do because the previous owner had started the foreclosure process. Mm-hmm. And so it actually finalized shortly after I boarded it with him. So there wasn't a lot that he had to do on that note. But
okay. And you're not to completion on any of these yet, correct?
I am to completion on the first one.
On the first one. And how'd you do?
I made mistakes, but I came out ahead in the end. So it actually turned out to be a really good deal.
Fantastic.
It would have been a home run if I hadn't made the mistakes I made, but.
Okay. So from what I'm gathering from both of you, it's inevitable that we are going to make mistakes, but you're still profitable. From what I'm hearing from both of you, it's still looking like you're going to both be profitable, that there's not going to be any kind of loss, even though you have made some mistakes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So would you both agree that mistakes can actually teach you and give you a better education for your next deals?
Absolutely.
And eliminate your fear, maybe?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay. Because, that's a big hurdle, everybody. It's fear. Fear is the biggest hurdle and the biggest paralyzer of success. It absolutely is. So I often say embrace those failures, embrace those mistakes, because they really can propel you onto much bigger and better and greater things, and it makes you stronger as an investor. Would you both agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the analysis paralysis, I have a lot of respect for, having gone through it and getting the first deal as quickly as possible to just get it done, and obviously do some due diligence. We still miss something, but as quickly as possible. That's where I was at.
Absolutely. And I think James took a little slower path, and that's okay. That's what makes us each different investors. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle of the two of you when I got started in note investing. So let me ask both of you, James, let's start with you. How did you source your first note by yourself?
Well, as I mentioned before, I met Jasmine from the Note Assistance Program. She has a trade desk with assets, and that's where I've purchased actually all three of my notes so far.
Okay.
Through her.
Terrific. And so you were able to scout her out and find her on your own. Or do you have expectations of going outside of NAP and sourcing notes from other places?
Possibly. I mean, at this point, I don't know that I would ever have the need to, because she's got quite a bit of inventory. So.
Terrific.
Yeah, I don't know that I would need to.
Terrific. And she's a great gal. I really have a lot of respect for Jasmine. She and I have become quite friendly with each other, and I always try and promote her as well, because she really knows her stuff. She's a great gal, and she'll steer you right. She's a no BS kind of gal, and I love that.
She has a huge heart.
She does. She really does. And so, Nick, what about you? Which direction did you take? Where did you source your first note?
Yeah, so I just kind of fumbled around, for a while, but I couldn't really find inventory. It was kind of this thing that everybody talked about, but nobody was willing to, really point you in any direction. So I went to the Paper Source seminar and just walked around and just talked to everybody I could, and just was like, yeah, hey, how do you find inventory? What did you do? Like, what did you do when you started out? And just ask people kind of questions on what they recommended and directions to take. And I probably walked out with, I'd say, a dozen people there that said that they had inventory and that they would be happy to plug me in and blah, 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 and all that. And out of those, one or two I followed up with everybody, and one or two actually, had anything that they sent over. And there's a lot of crap in there, but there was also there's a handful that we narrowed down, and one that we landed on. So it was just, networking and follow up was really it. And now we probably have two people that regularly send us stuff over, and then that's kind of what we're going through right now. Two people, and some of it's great, and some of it's not so great.
I think that's like any deal, though. Any deals that come across your desk, there's some that are great and some that are not so great. But yeah, and this space, we've talked about it. We talk about it at the Building Wealth with Notes workshop as well. And I don't know if you followed up with some of the asset managers that I gave you in the workshop, but that's another route to take. But that being said, it's really just a matter of asking questions and networking. And then once you develop, a reputation, because you both knew at this point, and developing your reputation, you're going to find also that you will have referrals. I'm sure that you're already starting to notice that in this space. Have you come across that yet?
Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't doubt that all 10 or 12 people actually did have inventory, and they just didn't know who I was, and I was just some newbie guy that they had no idea if I'd perform or waste time, and I wouldn't blame them, honestly. They all have reputations too and businesses to run, so I could definitely imagine that that's the case. I'm sure that's the case, but it was just.
Perfect. And James, what about you? Have you had any experience with that?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I mean, you mean like referral for inventory?
Referrals for anything, really, in this space.
Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, so within like the Note Assistance Program, so there's a community of investors that have gone through Jasmine's program, and they have referrals.
And mine.
And yours, absolutely.
Gone through my
absolutely.
Program too.
But there's a community of investors that, like we can refer realtors, attorneys, stuff like that. So in that respect, yes, absolutely. Referrals for attorneys and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Terrific. So let's talk about a little bit about your servicing accounts. So tell me a little bit about servicing, and I'm going to let you do a little educating now about the difference between servicing and loss mitigation. So Nick, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So we moved forward with Madison on our servicing, and because our servicer, yeah, I mean your definition is going to blow mine out of the water, but my understanding, and so far, it's that they're the ones who collect the monthly payments. Yep. And follow up with the borrowers. And in this case, because my note is non-performing, they're there. They're definitely with us in the process, and we're onboarded. We're 100% dialed in, and they've been great. But really, loss mitigation, who is trying to get the loan either reperforming or a deed in lieu or some kind of resolution, whether it's a foreclosure or what. That's really the loss mitigation department. So that's been who we've had the most contact with, because there's no payments being made. But assuming that the best case scenario and it reperformed, then a lot of our discussions would be with the servicer and making sure that they're on track, nothing's late, and receiving monthly payments and moving forward smoothly.
Exactly. And even though, everybody, even though you don't have a performing loan, you still need to set up with a servicing company on the off chance that you do, not off chance, but on the chance that you do get them to reperform, the note to reperform. Or sometimes when the note is transferred, there's some surplus funds. So there might be, $11 or $12 or $15 in an escrow account, and that has to go somewhere. So you need to set up your servicing company, even though you're not at this point, you don't have a performing loan. That's really important. So how hard was it, James, for you to set up, let's go to James. How hard was it for you to set up servicing, your servicing account? Would you say that was difficult?
No, not at all. It was easy. I use Madison as well. A few forms and you're pretty much set up.
And you're all set up. And would you say that that team is also ready, willing, and able to help you and answer your questions?
Yes. I've been primarily in contact with Shantae Duffy, and she's awesome. Yeah.
For you too, Nick?
Yep. Shantae's awesome. She's great.
Terrific. And everybody, just so you know, that's part of Building Wealth with Notes. I gave these gentlemen, that's my team too. I also use Madison. And so, I recommend to the Building Wealth with Notes workshop students, where they should at least start. And then you can go from there. Of course, you've got free will, you can choose, but I try and give you the best in the industry and make your life a lot easier as well. So what would you say, Nick, let's go to you. What would you say was one of the biggest hurdles or obstacles for you getting involved in note investing?
I mentioned inventory early on, but I think that looking back now and having a little bit more kind of altitude on the very, very beginning, I had a lot of information, but it wasn't organized. And to me, that was like that. I'm not going to jump in until I see the steps, even if I don't fully understand how the engine works, I want to know that, this equals this, and and the kind of the step-by-step. And so I think that going to your seminar was what I needed to really see the information that all these books put out there, but see it in a system and see it step by step. So that was for me probably what gave me the confidence to move forward. And really understanding the numbers. I'm really big on financials.
Yep.
I can chop up real estate deals all day, but notes are a different analysis, a different way to analyze. And so once I understood that, I just said, look, these are the numbers. I'm either in or I'm out, And so when I understood the process and I understood the numbers behind a deal, then there's less emotions involved for me. And so it made it easier to take the steps.
So would you consider that the Building Wealth with Notes workshop, was that one of your biggest takeaways, and was it worth the price of admission?
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about your thought process there.
Absolutely. Again, time and speed are my number one. Just moving quickly on my end is super important. So I could have spent another 6 months and taken my notes and books and, been the guy in my room just drawing lines between things, trying to, figure out the exact process. But I'd rather pay. I'd do that seminar 100 times before I'd waste, 6 more months trying to figure out things on my own. And to me, it put the pieces there. It was the roadmap, follow the roadmap. I mean, I pretty much called everybody that was in your say, hey, I'm Paige, a student. I'd love to work with you, Shantae or Daniel or whoever. And it was plug and play, and it just moved things along super quickly. I think it's an extremely smart investment. I would do it 100 times.
Fantastic. Thank you. That makes me happy. And it makes me happy that you've gone out and, again, put action behind your education and taken those first steps to get involved and become an expert and a note investor, because that's where you want to go. That's what fits your model as an investor right now. And I think that's fantastic. So thank you. James, kind of same question, what would you say was the biggest takeaway from, and you attended the masterclass. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I know Nick said that, Nick hasn't attended the masterclass yet.
Not yet, but I'm getting there.
I know he wants to. So James, let's talk to you about what is your biggest takeaway from the masterclass, and why did you decide to go in the masterclass?
Well, like I said before, I felt that I needed to be the expert before I started taking my own money, before I started investing and buying these deals on my own. I was doing JVs with you, but I felt like I needed to be an expert. I needed to know everything there was about notes before I took the plunge. And so I signed up for the masterclass, and the masterclass was amazing because with the workshop, you have 2 days to go over 20 different topics, and you give as much detail as you can, but it's limited just in the scope because of the time allowed. Right. But with the masterclass, you take one topic, like hard collateral file review, and you go over it in depth, spending 2 hours in one night going over just collateral file, and then you assign homework where people have to take 1, 2, 3 loans, however, and literally go through each file and do the audit. That level of detail it was amazing for me because it helped solidify all the information that I had taken in the past, and it made me realize that I can actually do this. Mm-hmm. And it gave me the confidence to be like, okay, now I need to buy every note I can get my hands on. Basically.
I love that. I think that's awesome. So, and I do give tools not only in the Building Wealth with Notes workshop, but I also kind of elaborate on those tools and give you even more in the masterclass. Did you find those to be helpful?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
And I use them now.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm using them now. Yes, definitely. Not having to reinvent the wheel it's a real luxury to be able to use the tools that were provided. So yeah, they're very useful. And
talk to me a little bit about how excited you were to go. I know we didn't win any bids, but how excited were you to actually be in the masterclass? We presented live tapes for bidding. So tell me about what you thought about that. How were you excited about that? How did that feel for you?
Oh, no, it was amazing. I actually found an asset in there that I really wanted to get. I was very excited because it was a Texas property. Turns out we didn't get it, but I was really hoping that I would get it.
Well, I was hoping that for you as well. It's just, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. It does happen. But it was super exciting to be able to have a live tape, to give it to all of you and let you bid live. And if you didn't have the fund, I told the students that if they didn't have the funds to bid, still play like you did, so do the evaluation. And I know that we actually changed. I listened to what the attendees had to say. Originally, our masterclass nights were Monday nights, but that proved to be a little difficult for those that had a job. So the suggestion was to change it to Thursday nights so that you could have the weekend to do the homework. Now, James, you were really diligent in terms of doing your homework every week. How did that help you in your confidence? And I know there was a time factor, but kind of walk me through weighing was that worth it, and was it worth giving up the time to do the homework, and how did that help you?
That's where you learn, is by doing the homework. I mean, that's where it really sinks in. And I think with the hard collateral file review, I had to do my homework on the weekends. Mm-hmm. I want to say that weekend I spent 4 or 5 hours just combing through collateral files, rewatching the video from the webinar. But that's where you learn. So I think it's very important that you do the homework.
Yeah, it is. And for the masterclass, we do record it, and I send out the recording typically that night. So you have it, the full week until the next class. And do you still refer back to those recordings?
I do. Actually, for the last file that I audited, I pulled it out and just kind of breezed through it a little bit, touching on some highlights just to make sure that I remembered everything that was presented and didn't forget anything.
Awesome. And, another thing that we had in the masterclass, we had an actual asset manager come on and speak to us in the masterclass. How did that help you in terms of your dealing with asset managers?
It was good to hear his perspective, what he's looking for, what ways to approach asset managers, like types of information that they want that's useful to them, so that you're not wasting their time.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good presentation.
Awesome. All right, Nick, I don't want to leave you out. So what about you? I know that you are planning to attend the masterclass, even though you've already jumped in and bought your first note. How do you think that that's going to help, promote your business and further your business even more?
Sure. So I think there's still a lot of value if you already have a note in getting, further education. For me, I'm huge on education. I read a ton. It's super important. So I think that the first round of fumbling through some mistakes on my end and on a couple of deals wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have under my belt prior to that, because then my questions would have some experience behind them. But I mean, honestly, if it lined up perfectly with the schedule, I would be taking it right now. So I think it's more scheduling than I know the value's there, and I know it's something I'm going to do. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Darlene, send me an email to info@cashflowchick.com and I will provide that information you are seeking. Hassan asked, he said that he wants to know more about the masterclass. Same thing, Hassan. Go ahead and send me an email at info@cashflowchick.com. And I will respond to you about the masterclass. I will say this, and Chris, I see your question just popped up, so I'll get to you in 1 second. But I will say this, the masterclass is that there is a prerequisite to attend the masterclass, and that is that you have to have attended in some form or fashion, either live and in person, the Building Wealth with Notes workshop, or the online version. There is, if you go to cashflowchick.com and go under the training tab, there is a Cashflow Chick community. There is an online training. So there is a prerequisite. And the reason that there is that is because we go over all of the basic information in the Building Wealth with Notes workshop. And it is in detail, but like James said, originally the Building Wealth with Notes workshop was 2 days. It has since become 3 days because we needed more time. But still, there's, that's only 3 days and there's a lot of ground to cover. So I give you all the tools in Building Wealth with Notes, but we use those when we get to the master class. So that is a prerequisite. It can be done. And I do hold the Building Wealth with Notes workshops a couple times a year, and I am starting to hold the master class 2 times a year as well. So not to worry, don't suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out, because it's not going anywhere, okay? And again, more information on any of those things, info@cashflowchick.com, and I will answer any questions you may have. Chris asks, regarding mistakes, could your mistakes have been avoided by using a checklist or more due diligence and following the system, or were those particular mistakes just a necessary evil of being a newbie? Nick, why don't you start with that with you?
Sure. So Chris, I think that's a really good question. I would say both, because I think that getting organized and making mistakes that force organization are kind of a necessary evil. But I would say that had we understood bankruptcy and understood our way around Pacer a little bit better and working through that, then we would have avoided it, hands down. That said, I think the numbers I'm pretty happy with on this deal. So I don't think it's a deal that I would have passed on anyway. So I don't know how much I would have done differently. And we learned a lot. Part of that might be luck. Part of that might, just that the deal lined up that way and that there could have been some other huge issue that we could have missed, but part of it is, you get a great framework from the class. Putting that together and getting that set up are really important on our end. And I think we just didn't understand bankruptcy enough to avoid that, but now we do, and it's part of our SOPs. So I'd say yes, both of those.
Yeah, and Nick, to compound that, do you think that you could have gone to Daniel Singer and asked him to help you to review the schedules and give you some advice?
Yeah, I think that now I have better questions to ask people. Yeah, so I know, hey. And it is chapter 7, Paige. You're right. It was chapter 7. I was kind of tinkering around looking for it, but so now I know what questions to ask early on. It's kind of just like, hey, does this look okay? Like, what are your thoughts? And it's like really vague questions. Now I know, okay, it's this. There's, not to go into too much detail, but what threw us off was there was a payment made. There's multiple payments made after the discharge of debt. So it was this kind of situation. We didn't really understand the implications of that. And in this instance, I could have drilled down and said, Daniel, here's the facts. Here's how I understand them. Is this accurate? Yes or no? What do you recommend? You know, should we move forward? This. And at the time I thought, oh, well, then this is this and that's that. So this must be in a situation where we can resolve it. And it wasn't, that wasn't the case. So.
Okay. So, you know, the takeaway from that is that you now know that you can also leverage your team.
Yep.
For the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yep,
but still really good learning experience.
Great learning experience. And I think the deal will be okay. So I'm okay. And I still feel good about it.
Awesome. All right. So James, what about you? You know, could your mistakes have been avoided by the checklists, or more due diligence? Or is this just a necessary evil?
I think my main mistake that I made was, oh, did we lose Paige?
Paige?
I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, something happened with my video. I'm checking it. Go ahead.
I think, so the main mistake that I made could have been solved with a checklist. I just didn't have it on the checklist. So like I said previously, the previous seller had started the foreclosure. It had finished shortly after I purchased the note. I didn't know. I didn't know that the foreclosure had finished. The borrower actually left the house. Mm-hmm. So the house was vacant. City came out, boarded it up. I had no idea for like 8 months because I didn't have property preservation go out and check on the property regularly, which is something that was covered in the you had mentioned in the master class. Mm-hmm. And I had this light bulb go off and I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that. And as soon as I did that, I learned that the property was boarded up and vacant. There you go. So yeah, that if I would have had that on my checklist, which I do now, you know, now I know that that's something that I need to do. So that definitely will not happen again.
Awesome. But I mean, was that something that was super detrimental, or is just something that a mild inconvenience at that point?
Well, it wasn't detrimental. I mean, the main thing that it did was it hurt my ROI. Okay. Because I held the asset longer than I should have. If I would have known that it was vacant, I could have handled it much quicker than I did. So okay. So that's the main thing.
And that happens to all of us, everybody. I want you to know, even as experts, you know, as you grow in your business and the more and more notes that you bring into your portfolio, the less time or focus you spend on each individual one. When you only have one or two or maybe a handful, you can really narrow in and zero in on, you know, those really particular distinct details, right? But when you've got a portfolio that's over 100 assets, there's not enough time. So when you have those checklists and checkpoints in place, that's a standard operating procedure, and how you learn that is by doing exactly what James just did. It's now like forefront of his mind. And so for me, you know, in my portfolio, that's SOP for us. So I don't even have to worry about it. It's just there. It happens. It happens regularly. So I can keep up with the portfolio. And I think that the guidance between the workshop and the masterclass, that will kind of really hammer in, here's really what you need to do going forward in your note investing business. Would you gentlemen agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So being new yourself, what advice would you give to other note investors just getting started in notes? So James, why don't we start with you?
I would say make sure that you have a good foundation education. Make sure that you know you've got that base, mm-hmm. But then go do your first deal like Nick. Jump in, jump in. Make sure you have a good team because they're going to be there. They're going to be the ones who are there to support you. But jump in because that's where you're going to learn. I mean, that's where you really learn and everything's like, oh, that's what she was talking about. That makes sense. You know, it's like you hear it and you know it, but until you experience it, it's not quite the same.
So do you still have fears, James?
I do not. I mean, I do. I'm scared I'm going to miss something in due diligence. But it's not crippling. It's not to the point where it's going to prevent me from buying more notes.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. And Nick, what about you? Being new yourself, what advice would you give to other note investors that are just starting out?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with James. I think that education is just, you got to have it. I think not only because you need to know the process, you need to understand the industry, which is, insanely important, but also because it gives you the confidence to move forward, right? And so you say, you know what? I've read the books, I've taken the courses, I've been around the successful people that do this. I think networking played a big part of that as well, as just getting out and shaking hands, seeing what those personalities are like, seeing what the speakers have to say. But yeah, I'd say education and with a close second of networking and being out there.
Now, it's interesting that you bring that up because, Nick, you're a very outgoing person. I knew that the minute that I met you. And, I think it just, with the education under your belt, you even grew even more in your networking capabilities between, going to the Building Wealth with Notes workshop, going to the conference, and then you even took a really big bite out of it and went to the IMN conference, which if anybody knows what the IMN conference, that's a very high-end conference. There's a lot of asset managers there. A lot of big hedge funds there. Men and women, mostly men, that handle literally billions of dollars worth of money to buy and sell notes. So for you, Nick, how did the Building Wealth with Notes workshop play into your ability to step into the IMN conference, and how did that help you?
Yeah, I think so. The IMN conference was pretty crazy, right? And I had a lot of people say mixed reviews of like, I think that's out of your league, man. I think you're really, overstepping and going into stuff you're not going to understand. And these are all, hedge fund guys and all that. I think that the taking your course was, I really understood the foundation so I could actually have conversations with these guys, right? And enough where you can get into kind of like logical and discussions on the business side, enough to get that out of the way and connect on the personal side, and enjoy those conversations with people, and they know that you're real and you're not like, and I was fledgling, I was complete newbie compared to anybody there. I was probably the newest person at the entire thing, but enough to where I understood it, where they knew I was taking it seriously, and where I said, hey, I'm new, but I'm very serious about it. Like, oh, okay, he's done his education, he has a high interest, and knows the basics, instead of having no idea and going in fresh without even the basics understanding. So I thought it was super important, and I thought IMN was great, but I'm really glad I did the course. I took your course before IMN, because I would have
yes.
been really a fish out of water if I hadn't done that.
Awesome. And for you, James, you are the opposite. You professed when we first started and when we first met that you were more of an introvert. You weren't really comfortable in your networking. So tell me a little bit about how this progression from, meeting me, coming to the Building Wealth with Notes workshop, and then going out to Paper Source and a few others, how have you shifted from in your networking?
So going to meetups and networking has always been hard to me, because I am an introvert, but also because I kind of felt like I was playing a real estate investor, like I wasn't really a real estate investor.
Okay.
But now I believe now that I am a note investor. And so when I go to networking events, I present myself as a note investor, and I have the confidence to be able to have the conversations to back it up.
I think that's so amazing. And my camera's blinking out again. I don't know why it's doing that. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. Maybe it's the sun. it's, I'm so happy to hear you say that, because when we first went to you came to the Building Wealth with Notes workshop, and then you went to Paper Source. And I loved the fact that you kind of stuck with me and watched what I was doing, but you didn't present yourself as a note investor, but you are a note investor. And I'm so happy to hear that you're now presenting yourself as a note investor and confident, and to say, hey, I know what I'm doing, at least to some degree of level of expertise. And I am a note investor. And that's got to feel really good to you.
It does. It does. It's still hard as an introvert to go, rub elbows with a bunch of people, but it's easier than it was, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So, both of you, I'm gathering that you would recommend, the Building Wealth with Notes workshop and the masterclass to anybody that is seeking to get into note investing. So I feel pretty confident that I can make that statement. Yes?
Absolutely.
100%.
Okay.
If you're going to pay something, you might as well pay the money and save the time. In my opinion, I'd do it 100 out of 100 times.
I would do it over again as well.
Awesome. Awesome. And Pam just asked, how much money is needed to get started in note investing? James, why don't you start with that one?
You mean from an investment perspective? From an investment perspective, I've seen deals anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000. I mean, it just depends. There's all shapes and sizes out there.
Right. And it's a matter of knowing what your buy box is. And that's something that we go to at length. We discuss in the Building Wealth with Notes workshop. And then we also practice it hands-on. And then the masterclass, we take that buy box once it's defined, and we actually apply it to live tapes, which is really cool. So yeah, I agree. And what about you, Nick? How much money is needed to get started in note investing?
That's hard. Yeah, I think it's what it would be, Pam. Whatever you would find as what your your buy box or your deal profile, whatever you want as your kind of method of investment and what kind of properties and all that. But my first deal cost $55,000, so I felt comfortable with that given the property value, and that was what it cost me on the first one. I like that range right now. There's some other things I want to check out in note investing and see some other, paths of learning about whether it's commercial or, seconds, and just learn more about all these things out there. But right now, I'm very happy in the ranges I'm in. And I think my next, definitely handful of deals will be right around there.
Yeah. And, and yes, Pam, and Pam asked, can notes be bought with your self-directed IRAs? Yes, absolutely. It's a perfect vehicle for that. And I think, James, you're using a self-directed IRA. Is that correct?
Yes, so far I've purchased I purchased 5 with you and 3 on my own, and all have been done with my self-directed IRA.
Exactly. So it's the perfect vehicle. So yes, Pam, absolutely. Here's the beauty part about something else that I teach at both workshops, and that is that you don't. I mean, it's helpful if you have your own self-directed IRA, but you don't necessarily need that either. There are ways that I do teach you how to raise capital. So, how to find and fund your notes if you don't necessarily have the money yourself. It is a cash and carry business. So, it's one of those things that at some point you do need the cash, but it doesn't necessarily need to be your own. And I do teach you where to go and how to find that. And that's something that Nick knows about too, because Nick is a syndicator, right? So, he has access to capital and is learning how to use syndication. We also, at the last Building Wealth with Notes workshop, had Jillian Sidoti from Trowbridge Sidoti come in and speak to us about raising capital the right way. And she's tremendous. So, all these little things we teach you how and what to do, not only to find notes and fund, but how to fund them as well, and then to work them out and use your teams. So pretty amazing. Yvonne asked, where did you purchase and did you use your own money? So I think, Yvonne, James found Jasmine Willowa, and Nick did some networking with at the Paper Source Convention and found a resource there. But he also was able to connect with people at IMN. So, you know, IMN, again, is a pretty big conference, and you need to know what your buy box is. And your buy box basically is your criteria of loans that you're looking for. Everybody's different. Go over that at length. So, you know, it's really, oh, where in the States? Okay, thanks, Yvonne. So James, what states did you buy in?
Wisconsin, Ohio, and Georgia.
Awesome. And what about you, Nick?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Okay, Wisconsin is a favorite.
Wow, James, Wisconsin, man, we might be neighbors on our deals, huh?
There we go. So why did you pick Wisconsin? Tell me a little bit about that.
So honestly, the reason why I picked Wisconsin was because I, at that point, was it was not based on demographics. It was based on the fact that I was getting to the point where I knew I needed to pick a note. I needed to find something to purchase. And so I just found a note and purchased it.
Awesome. And Nick, what about you?
So I started seeing, I mean, obviously there's certain states that you get better deals in and ones that there's less negotiation room. Wisconsin was one that checked off enough boxes of the type of timelines and expenses involved, while still I saw a lot of deals there. So I wanted to narrow down, you know, in your course, you talked about picking a handful or, you know, a specific amount of states and moving forward with those. I didn't want to spread myself too thin and be all over the place. I saw a lot of deals coming down the pipeline in Wisconsin that I liked the numbers on and that still had a really good population. I like really populated stuff. So it checked off the boxes that were important to us and at the pricing that we liked.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're kind of coming to an end. I'd like to ask either of you gentlemen or both of you gentlemen for maybe some closing thoughts on where you should go. And Yvonne just typed one more. So I think she's got one more question coming up. But what, you know, do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you'd like to tell everybody on the webinar tonight?
Go ahead.
So again, so when I attended your class, I think I told you, you know, after the first workshop, I barely remembered the drive home to San Diego because there was so much like information swirling around in my head, and I knew that this was an opportunity for me to grow as an investor, and I knew that this was the space that I wanted to be in. I just would tell people that if you think that notes are for you, take the plunge, because it's definitely, I think it's definitely worth it.
Awesome. And I'm going to let you, James, answer this one question, and then Nick, I'm going to come to you with that same question. So James, did judicial or non-judicial play a part in your decision to buy the notes that you've bought?
So it does play a part. I try to stay in non-judicial states, but Ohio obviously is judicial. I found an asset that I liked, so I just decided to go ahead and purchase it. So I do look in judicial, but I try to, you know, I primarily look in non-judicial, but there's a couple judicial states that I look at as well.
Agreed. Because really, if you only focus everybody on one, judicial versus non-judicial, or vice versa, non-judicial versus judicial, you're really going to limit the field of opportunity. So, you know, don't be afraid of judicial. It might take a little bit longer, but if the numbers are there to support the deal, then do it. You know, and if it fits your criteria and your what as an investor, then do the deal. But, you know, there are certain states that are not conducive to that. You know, we've talked about it. We talk about it at length at the Building Wealth with Notes workshop. So, you know, certain states I tend to shy away from. Others are very successful. But don't, you know, try not to narrow your field too much because you're really limiting your opportunity, in my opinion. Yes, you are welcome, Yvonne. All right. So last thing, Nick. Let's talk about what would you say? Do you have any last little tidbits to give to the Wednesday Wealth attendees tonight?
Yeah, I guess my closing would just be the things that I found the most success in. I just reiterate, it would just be education, networking, and diving in. I think are the most important, hands down. The more you can do all three of those, the more success you'll have, as far as I've experienced so far.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm hearing that both of you are glad that you attended the workshop that you attended and that you're enjoying the successes of your adventure into note investing. I'm so proud of both of you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for being here with me tonight and with our participants. I know that they've gotten a lot of value. Like Yvonne said, she said, thank you. This was awesome. Really thank you for sharing your insights, because, it's hard for me. It's hard for people on the other side of things. They look at me and say, well, Paige, it's easy for you because you're an expert. But you know what? I started out exactly where you guys are. So it was really important for me to showcase both of you and let everybody know that it's doable, even though we make mistakes. And I still make mistakes, by the way. I want everybody to know that. Yes, I am an expert, but I still make mistakes. It happens. Generally, my little oopses are small. They're small oopses, but they do happen sometimes. So, just really go out in confidence and go out and, like these two gentlemen have said, and educate yourself, stick to the checklists, leverage your team. That's a huge one. Leverage your team and network. And that's really what it takes to be successful. And I really wanted to showcase both of you tonight. So thank you for joining me very much this evening. For everybody else, I noticed there were a couple other comments. Again, Hassan, go ahead and email me again and I will respond. Thank you for joining us on Wednesday Wealth webinar. I do hold these every last Wednesday of the month. I try and bring on guests that, will help to benefit you in your capabilities and or to combat your fear of note investing, or to bring value to you and your life and your investing career, regardless of whether it's in notes or not. So be sure to look out for every Wednesday Wealth webinar. You go to wednesdaywealth.com to register for each month. And, if you want to hear about something, send me an email. Send me an email to info@cashflowchick.com and give me a topic, and I will try and incorporate that into the Wednesday Wealth webinars. Also, if you're interested in the Building Wealth with Notes workshop, go to buildingwealthwithnotes.com to look for the next one. And if you're interested in the masterclass, please reach out to me at info@cashflowchick.com. You can follow me on Facebook as well, and also Instagram. So thank you, gentlemen, very much for being a part of this evening. You really have made it very special for not only me, but our attendees. And I'm just so excited to see you both grow in your note investing career and watch you just blossom and be so successful. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Paige. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you, Paige.
Absolutely. Chris says, excellent. Thanks, guys. All right, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will talk to you and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.